I'm Anna.
And I'm Ben.
We're AutoSave. Welcome to our channel.
Today we're watching My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 15. Last episode we got a bit of a recap over the entire season so far, and that led us to the point of depression we are at now. We understand a bit of the severity of the situation, the casualties at hand, and who we think is probably going to be benched for a while. But the person who won't be benched for a while is All For One, because apparently he's going to go break his own physical body out, and he has 7 Nomus in hand to do so. That's a very scary thing, because we don't have a lot of forces.
Yeah, like add insult to injury, honestly.
I assume that we're going to get Deku going out on his own based off of, the intro.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know what that means for the story as a whole. It's pretty depressing to see heroes hang up their capes and, a sign being put on a statue of All Might saying, "I am not here." So I'm just still trying to cope with that. Are you ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that was My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 15. That was a great episode. For an episode that just relied mainly off of dialogue, I know that there was action in the sense of, prisoners escaping.
But the format.
Yeah, it definitely heavy leaned into the dialogue side, and I'm so happy. There were so many lines that I was like, what, like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Just like hit me to my core.
Like, it could have failed in terms of like trying to work in like, okay, 7 hours ago, tonight, tomorrow morning,
2 days later.
2 days later, it could have failed and felt like the pacing was like totally wacky.
It was so good.
It could have totally flopped.
Yeah, but the pacing especially, it was so good. And like, it felt balanced in terms of each side we got, which is kind of funny because majority of what we got was the villains, but what they gave us from the hero side of things was so like, I don't know, it was something we needed, and they gave us a good amount of information in that time of like what has happened since and where everybody is right now and what the feelings are, that right. I'm like, I don't know, I thought that this is a great episode.
It was it definitely had an emotional kind of impact in terms of starting the episode, and really the heavy part of the episode, the most kind of content, was directly like, breaking out of prison, All For One. Really, really not good news.
Yeah.
And then to kind of do that and then kick us while we're down, we go to the hospital and we get, some people waking up and regaining consciousness, but also the fact that there are people protesting outside of the hospital. We know Endeavor's in surgery, Gran Torino, Aizawa, everyone's pretty injured. Todoroki can't speak, his throat is burned. And then the very last thing they tell us is that Deku hasn't woken up, he's not waking up.
Do you think that he is conscious in like the vestige world?
Well, okay. Well, he can dream and enter that world.
Yeah.
So why not? If he is unconscious, why can't that also be
We've also seen him... We've seen him being awoken after it being in that dream state in the end of Season 4 post-credit scene. So I wonder if he is in the vestige world, that will be what inevitably wakes him up.
It feels... part of me doesn't see if that would be a thing narratively that would be good.
Yeah.
To have him like have a powwow with the, other people who've had One For All. I don't know if that's like narratively where I think it's gonna go, that he kind of regroups with everyone and they like talk about like the next steps, or he gets a different quirk. I wonder if he'd almost hear silence from them.
Well, so yes, I agree that could be a cool way to go about it. When I think about if he's in Vestige World, though, I would think that it would be like him talking to the other past users and then choosing to decide that none of what they're saying is what he's going to do. and which would lead him to isolation, right?
Mhm.
Like, what
It could just be a lot of people at a table talking, and then none of it's really like.
couldn't you see like the mindset of, I've been listening to what you guys have told me all along, and a bunch of my friends are injured, a bunch of people that I look up to are dead. I need to do something about it myself,
Mhm.
you know?
Or there could be a recall of the line of everyone wanting to stay within this boy and him starting to feel like he wasn't the one that should have, had this power.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know. It's going to be interesting where they go with him. Uh, I cannot believe that it was Chisaki that was like, I can believe it. I just didn't think about it. And I'm like, what are they going to do with him? He can't use his quirk at the moment, from what we understand. Like, was it just like an Easter egg? Do you think they're going to do anything with him down the line?
I don't know, because the only villain that was really like highlighted on in the opening, if we were to use that as where to get evidence, was the girl that broke Chizuki out. So I do wonder kind of which villains are actually going to have some importance going forward. I mean, when we had that screen up and we saw All for One, and then there was a dark kind of room
Yeah.
that someone was in, and then there were two other rooms. And so I'm kind of wondering like who was in each of those rooms. At first I was like, oh, there was a blonde guy. That must have been like muscular, but then we saw like
Moonfish.
Moonfish, and I was like, I guess that's kind of blonde. And then I don't know. And then Chisaki, or there was another villain.
I don't take it being Chisaki because this guy has arms, and Chisaki
Yeah.
doesn't.
That's a fair point. Wasn't even paying attention to the arms. We
didn't-
saw a guy, and I don't know if I know who it was.
It kind of looked like Stain a little bit.
A little bit. And like kind of peeking around the corner,
Yeah.
as all of the other villains were running.
Because we typically only saw Stain with his mask on, and then when it came off, his fanatic eyes mainly. But whoever it was either... See...
Moonfish does his thing, and then I believe it might be after.
It looks like Stain.
That looks like Stain.
Yeah. But it also kind of looks like the guy who's like the computer guy, but we know he's not here, right?
Not, yeah.
It looks like Stain without his mask. And I wonder if he's thinking about what he's going to do. You know?
Honestly, the reintroduction of Stain would fit really well with the conversation between Spinner and All for One in this episode as well. Because Spinner basically says, the person I was following was Shigaraki, not you. An reintroduction of the person that Spinner would probably prefer to follow other than All for One. I wonder if this is where things are heading, is kind of factions of like, who do you want to follow?
Yeah. And it's interesting because the biggest takeaway for me from this entire episode is it seems like they are making the narrative choice to end the series with saving Shigaraki. And when I say saving him, I don't mean he becomes a good guy. I don't mean he's going to go to jail. I mean that I feel like the best you could do to save him would be to kill him, or let his body not be used by All for One.
Remove the connection between him and All for One. I think that is all that's needed. And we get that imagery of Shigaraki's body basically being pushed away and the child Shigaraki walking forward, which does kind of evoke the feeling of Shigaraki being, separated from.
And it goes with what Deku was saying the last time they saw each other, and Deku being like that there is something in there that he feels like he should save. It also goes along with Gran Torino's whole memory of Nana Shimura and talking about like, yeah, I don't have a child anymore. That's the picture that they're painting, and it is fascinating. I'm super excited to see how it would play out with Shigaraki.
We also get the lines of the only person to reach out their hand to Shigaraki, and then in the opening we have Deku reaching out his hand to the child Shigaraki. So it's like kind of leaning towards like there's going to be someone, Deku is going to try to rescue Shigaraki. And honestly, Shigaraki might, want that. And especially not want All for One to be controlling.
I don't know. Like, Shigaraki is such an interesting personality, because we've seen him grow and we've seen him turn, and we've seen not even turn. We know so much about Shigaraki, yet I don't know now what he'd want to do in the situation, because like his body's been taken over. He doesn't like that, but what does he want now? Like is it the destruction of everything? Is it going to change based off of what All for One's doing to him? Like,
well, the thing that really I took away from this episode in terms of like how Shigaraki might feel right now is that Shigaraki always thought that he was kind of being he was being tutored and led by All for One into being able to take on his own and afterward. Successor. Same as Deku with All Might. And then I think Shigaraki is learning as these episodes progress that he is being manipulated, definitely. And then in this episode, All for One keeps switching in his dialogue between our and we and then I.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm gonna be the demon lord.
Yeah.
And he goes, but our dreams. And so he keeps switching between, you know, who's gonna be happy with this and who wants this and whose ideas and dreams are these and who will be the one actually in power in the end. Shigaraki more and more is just kind of a vessel.
How do you make a fulfilling ending here? Because so when you've painted the story to have a fight between All Might and All for One, you end it where it did, All for One's in prison, yada yada. The two people who you're pushing forward as the real protagonists, one way or the other in the story, are Deku and Shigaraki. We've seen both of their growth. I imagine that the final battle or the real fight would have to be between Shigaraki and Deku in some means. But now you have two All for Ones. If there is, like, my mind immediately goes to, okay, defeat Shigaraki in a way that Shigaraki's the one who takes out All for One, right? Somehow. But if we do get, for example, if you need Deku fighting one of them and other people fighting the other, how would you, like, pin up the situation, right? All Might's off the table. If you have Deku fighting One for All here, and then what? Todoroki and Bakugo versus Shigaraki? Like what kind of matchup would you see?
Maybe I would put Endeavor into the battle against like the actual All for One. Because of like, oh, you know, he was the number 2 hero, but behind All Might, and All Might already fought All for One and put him in jail.
Yeah.
And then I would definitely think Shigaraki's obviously body, because he is not the consciousness that is in the forward at the moment, versus Deku. That's what I would think at the moment if Endeavor's surgery goes well.
The Endeavor thing would work out because it'd be like, okay, even if Endeavor died in the end, right? If he could take out All for One, it would at least be doing something that All Might never could.
And he's opened up because Todoroki Shoto says that he's going to take on Dabi, which kind of removes Endeavor from having to deal with Dabi.
Correct. Yeah. But that being said, what's the timeline going to look like? Holy shit, we are hurt. We have like Bakugo sure is like walking, but like...
But as he was yelling at everyone, they showed blood coming out of his mouth.
Like, oh my god. This was such a good episode, dude. I'm just like scrolling through the timeline where you can see like the little thumbnails pop up, and I saw the comparison again from Todoroki to Dabi, and Todoroki's original outfit, right? That we first saw in season 1. I'm like... The comparison there is brilliant, because before this fight, you and I were like, team, it has to be Endeavor versus Dabi. But I completely forgot and didn't see the obvious connection of the original Todoroki we had and how Deku changed him. But that Todoroki is the embodiment, like 10 years in the future with no change, of Dabi. Like it's so perfect.
I mean, they were both the ones that were chosen by their father to be his successor.
Yeah.
Okay. I just can't believe they went the villains. Did you even imagine that the villains would go right into more action after the operation failure, basically.
Like, as in, like, breaking up. No,
Yeah,
I didn't.
I did like this. It's like the nighttime. They literally, people were still getting the news of what happened.
I know. All for One's just smart. Like, okay, so I feel like you and I are on the same level as Deku and Shigaraki, right? We had the same processing power mentally. This is what's gonna happen. This is the big fight. And while we're over here being like, this is the big fight, we're consumed by this. All for One's already thinking like 4 steps ahead. He's like, oh, that's fine. Like, you can like appreciate whatever. You could like think this is happening, but nah, I'm automatically.
It was the smartest timing.
Yeah.
It was so smart.
It was so
People
smart.
were still like processing what had happened. The people at Tartarus were still receiving the news of what happened and the stats.
Yeah.
And that there were 7 Nomus on the loose, basically. And then literally as they're talking and realizing and processing this information.
Yeah.
The timing.
It's like in sometimes in anime or TV shows you're like, don't open the door, don't open the door, like, oh, kill him already, don't let him talk, don't let him survive, he's gonna hurt you. It's like,
you always let the villain have their monologue.
Yeah, but this All for One like just preemptively just struck, and it was pretty satisfying to see as a character in this anime doing. It was pretty cool. The Demon Lord thing came out of nowhere for me, and I think it's intentional.
The language of that?
Yeah, no, the language, exactly. Because it's not language we hear a lot because we aren't exposed to All for One too often. So it's like reinforces the idea of this like adversary that is kind of new in a weird way, even though they're not. It's been the adversary all along.
He's just never been at the forefront of actually doing anything himself, really.
Other than season 3, before the story started. One line that is stuck in my head right now, whether I'm thinking about Deku and the Vestiges and One for All as a power, whether I'm thinking about Todoroki, Endeavor, Dabi, Shigaraki and his power of decay within the Vestiges of the world he's in, your quirk, not his. It's your quirk, not his. Like, whether it's Todoroki maybe one day saying that to Dabi to try to deflate his balloon of being like, I'm going to ruin Endeavor's image.
With his own, yeah.
Exactly. Or maybe it's All for One wanting to use decay to kill somebody and Shigaraki choosing not to use it because it's his quirk, Like,
what if there was someone that Shigaraki didn't want to kill or use decay on?
Yeah.
Is that even possible? Like,
Spinner?
Maybe. I don't know. But part of me is like trying to rack my brain of like, who would Shigaraki actually have some, whether it's he wants to use it himself against this person and it be his decision could also be a possibility. But I do like the idea that All for One might use decay in a way that Shigaraki would either want to be the one making that decision himself or wouldn't want it to be used in that situation.
Like decay, we can now see the scale of it, right?
Decay is crazy.
So even if like people were a mile away, but it was still within Decay's radius, and those people were Dabi.
Yeah, the radius is bigger now.
Yeah, but Dabi or Toga or Spinner, and Shigaraki's like, I don't want to lose them, I don't know what it would go down, but it's an interesting plot point that they could potentially hit on.
Because we haven't really ever gotten a clear idea of if Shigaraki has any actual feelings for the people that he's spent all of these seasons with.
I think he definitely does.
I like to think he does.
Think about what Spinner said. He was like, we even bonded and we both played video games. I was like, yes, you can bond over both playing video games. I get that. I've bonded with people over video games before, Yeah,
I like to think that he wouldn't want his League of Villains to be killed.
Yeah.
Unless it was his decision to kill them, which I don't think it would be.
I forgot. So when we got an introduction about Moonfish, right, and he cut off, what's his hero name? Like Dupla Arms or something? But whatever. And then Todoroki and Bakugo stumbled upon him in the forest. Mm-hmm. After that all happened, Chisaki said to Tomura something like, "You lost, and you had all of these top tier pieces of the board,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They, like I forget what game they were playing, but in chess terms, it was like you've lost 2 queens. Like you've lost 2 powerful
I
pieces on
mean,
your board.
Moonfish is like crazy, crazy.
Yeah, and Moonfish
Deadly.
is the dude
The
who
deadly edge shot.
Red Riot like fought against after he used the quirk enhancer, and Moonfish doesn't even need it. Remember? But like they are Moonfish and Muscular are extremely powerful,
Yes.
and I wonder where they're going to be used. Is
Just to wreak havoc on their own, or to be brought in to the villain team.
we're gonna have to see it, right? Like
We did have Muscular reacting to seeing Shigaraki. So.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm really into the show right now. I didn't want this episode to end. The pacing was great. Hearing Todoroki say he's me internally, obviously not out loud. Throat hurts.
I just want to be there for the family gathering that is happening in the Todoroki hospital room right now.
The mom's out of the hospital.
I want to hear like them talk about Endeavor, you know, in surgery. When we didn't see his mom walk in right away, I did wonder if she was
Going to him
with
first.
Endeavor. And then I was like, oh, but this timing's kind of funky that's happening. So I feel like she is going to walk in. It's like more of a surprise to us because they want us to think that maybe she's going to see
Endeavor.
Endeavor.
Obviously, because of the intro, Deku gets Gran Torino's scarf at some point.
Yes.
I imagine once he somehow wakes up, there will be a conversation.
Be, like, on him? It could just be like placed on him.
Maybe, but I imagine there will be a conversation between Deku and Gran Torino about Shigaraki. Like, based off of Gran Torino thinking about it.
Okay.
And Deku's last intention towards Shigaraki being potentially saving him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there might be like a picking up of Gran Torino's will physically represented by the scarf.
Okay.
Maybe.
I like that. That feels good.
This episode felt good, man.
Yeah.
I want to know what our new villain, new character is going to be like, because she's getting a lot of attention in the intro and she looks pretty cool.
She looks cool. Obviously, we literally didn't... it's so purposeful that she didn't use her quirk at all, or like even do anything that would reference an idea to quirk.
What does it mean
out?
that she... Okay, this is like Ben Crazy Corner time. I usually don't do it for this show. What does it mean that she opened Chisaki's door? Not in the sense of like... I'm not saying that there's any connection there. All I'm saying is that no other villain who is locked up in this maximum security prison went out of their way to try to help somebody.
Villain. I could see it as a passing of the torch. Like, Chisaki was definitely another figurehead besides Shigaraki, and they were kind of at odds of who was going to be the face, you know, of the villains.
Yeah.
And I wonder if her opening this door is almost a passage of the torch, that she is going to stand as a leader as well, opposite, you know, in opposition to Shigaraki.
Yeah, but it could like waver more towards a morally good villain rather than a bad villain, because
More
we're showing
Stain-like?
sympathy.
Maybe more Stain-like, there could be sympathy.
I'm thinking like Mr. Compress's great-great-grandfather.
Okay.
Like
Robin Hood.
Yeah. And I'm maybe thinking that to tie it back to the story, right? You're not just going to introduce purple hair. Okay, first of all, I can't not say it. I like her appearance.
Yes, she has a great design.
But like it'd be hard to just flat out push an antagonist into the story in one way or another and have them fit. I wonder if the way that they're going to approach it is by tying her together with what's his name, Kai Chisaki, Overhaul. I wonder if they're going to be sticking together, and that's like the way that we get her into the story.
I think if she's going to enter, she needs to fit an area that isn't currently being taken up. And I do like kind of where your thought process was going in terms of what her morality would be. Because, as you said, none of the other villains would have stopped to open that door. She obviously is somewhat, is not as selfish and self-preservation as the other villains. So it does make you wonder, like, why is she
Yeah.
in there?
Exactly.
And I almost want to go back to the description of Tartarus where they list all the reasons that people are there to see if maybe we got a clue of like what type
when
of
did we get that?
I don't know. I think it might have been at the beginning of this episode. But I do wonder if we got a clue at all in this episode of why she was locked in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting.
We don't even know what floor she was on. You know,
She
obviously was on either the same floor as Overhaul or below Overhaul, which is also something to think about in terms of like how dangerous she is.
Yeah, I imagine she's incredibly dangerous. I just don't know if we could get any, like... There are so many different variations for why people would be in a high-security prison that I don't think they'd have them set up of, like, kinds of crimes.
Yeah, they said that I think they did say they had it somewhat like that, but it was also whoever is the most dangerous, you know? And so... Obviously, dangerous could also be in terms of like your quirk just being really hard to handle, and
Based
so you
on
need
the
more and
level
more
of danger
security
posed by the quirks and the severity
of the crime.
Interesting.
So she is her crime and or her quirk are more dangerous and or severe than Overhaul.
Not necessarily.
They could have been on the same floor.
Because
but
Overhaul doesn't have a quirk anymore, seemingly, right? So
so of course Overhaul might be up higher severity of crime.
Or even if he was also down lower. I don't think it was clear enough for us to be able to say what floors they actually were on.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that she either has a crazy quirk or did some crazy fucked up shit, which I don't really believe because she went to help a prisoner stuck in the cell. Helping a prisoner escape, but still helping a prisoner, right?
Yeah.
Who she doesn't even know. It's interesting.
Why open the door?
I don't know. All right. Oh, last thing. I promise. All for One carrying his own life support machine.
I thought it was like a machine gun or some tank, like piece of a tank.
This is so much more metal.
Forgot. And then, yeah.
Insane. Unbelievable. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we hope to see you next time.